The current market for computer components, graphics cards in particular, has prevented new and veteran PC gamers from getting the latest and greatest, and even previous gen hardware. So when my friend Brighton asked if I could build a PC for his girlfriend Maddie, I was a bit hesitant. However, thanks to some sheer luck on eBay, I managed to part together a PC that shouldn't have any issue running the latest and greatest titles. So without wasting any more time, let's go over the parts. Starting off with the CPU, while this wasn't purchased at the epic $80 price tag, the Ryzen 5 1600AF is still a solid option. This is basically a 2600 being sold as a 1600, and when it went on sale for a few times, this was one of the best budget CPUs money could buy. At around $165, however, this is still a decent deal. The Ryzen 5 3600 does go on sale every now and then, so I'd go with that if possible, but this CPU will pair nicely with the graphics card, which I'll get into in a second. For RAM, I went with this 16GB kit from Jill clocked at 3000 MHz. This was one of the cheaper kits of RAM that also had decent speeds and timings, so naturally that's what I chose. The 1600AF being an earlier Ryzen CPU will benefit greatly with faster speeds and dual channel. I would have gone with a white kit given that's the theme of this build, but this will still work fine along with the other parts. For the motherboard, I went with the ASRock B450M Steel Legend. This is the most white motherboard I could find at the time, and it's a solid value at around $90. There's plenty of cooling on the 6-phase VRM, generous I/O, and some RGB to spice things up. For the power supply, I chose the 600-watt 80+ bronze EVGA BA unit. This is a newer power supply from EVGA, and it has an adequate amount of wattage to power this system. This of course has all black cables, which is always nice given that I won't be using any sleeved cables. For storage, I just have this cheap 120GB 8-data SSD for Windows, and a 1TB Seagate hard drive for mass storage. I gave Maddie a few choices for a white PC case as she's going for a white and pink color scheme. She ended up going with the Deepcool McCube 110. This doesn't have crazy good airflow, but there is some intake on the sides. I really like the look of this case, and for $53.99 on Newegg, this looks to be a good option, though I'll find out once I build in it. I'll also be throwing in these white RGB fans from GIM and a 12V RGB light strip. I bet you all are dying to know what the graphics card is, so here's what I got. While it's difficult to get a good deal on a graphics card nowadays, I kept my eyes peeled on eBay and found this, an EVGA GTX 980 Ti for $250. I sent it to my friend to purchase it, but eBay wasn't letting anyone buy it. That listing is still up to this day, so what did I get? There happened to be another 980 Ti that had just been listed, so I hopped on it and here we are. For the price, this is actually a pretty okay deal given the current circumstances. This is on par with cards like the 1660 Super and the 5600 XT, and assuming that it doesn't drop dead, this shouldn't need upgrading anytime soon. I don't have the exact total of this build, but with taxes and everything, this should have come out right under $800. So with all of that being said, let's get to building. This build turned out great, and I think Maddie is going to enjoy using it. I unfortunately didn't have any time to do any benchmarks, but I did stress test this system with Heaven Benchmark, so it's at least stable. The 980 Ti will perform slightly worse than a GTX 1070 and 1660 Super, and will outperform cards like an RX 580. This is still a great card, and even though I never tested any games, this won't have any problem running most titles. Speaking of the 980 Ti, you might have noticed that it's no longer the original color. I wanted to add more white to this system as I was just going to use lights for the pink, so I chose to spray paint the graphics card and the CPU cooler. I went with a matte finish as I'm not a huge fan of gloss, and most of the parts in this system aren't really glossy. I got a paint and primer combo, masked off the parts I didn't want paint on, and painted the CPU cooler cover and graphics card shroud. I did about 4 or 5 light coats and let both parts dry for 24 hours. Both of the parts turned out looking really good if I do say so myself. I also added an RGB LED strip, but the one I originally put looked super ugly because each different color LED were separated. I ended up using a different LED strip and the colors look much better than they're being shown. What I really like about this motherboard is that you can use and control regular and addressable RGB. The only issue I had with this build was with the fans. I chose this kit from GIM and this kit claimed to have PWM functionality. The fans all plug into a hub powered by a SATA cable, and there's a separate cable for ARGB and PWM. The RGB works just fine, but I was never able to get the motherboard to detect the fans, so I used the included remote to set the speed at low. Overall, I'm really happy that I was able to put this build together even with the rough GPU market. This is a rough tally of all of the parts. Not necessarily a lot of crazy value going on here, but it's still pretty good. $250 for a 980 Ti is still a great deal given the performance it offers, and I totally could have gotten a 3600 if I had waited, but the 1600 AF is still a great price to performance CPU. But what do you guys think? Let me know what you think about this build in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and make sure you're subscribed and have notifications enabled for more quality tech videos. Anyways, thanks for watching and I'll see you later.